Well, welcome everybody to the latest episode of the HR Tech Chat video podcast. And with me today, I have a very, very interesting guest, and we have a super interesting topic, the long tail of talent. Um, his name is James Galvin, and he is CEO and co-founder of Starcircle, which is a company based in Cork, Ireland. And it's later on a Friday for him than it is for me on the US East Coast today. Welcome, James.
Thanks very much, Brent. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, Before we get into our discussion today, um, could you possibly just introduce yourself to our viewers, where you come from professionally, what landed you into what you do, um, and sort of what was inspiration for the founding of Star Circle and all that kind of stuff.
Sure thing. Well, my name is James. I'm based here in Cork in Ireland, and for the past 16 years, I've been working with big tech and pharma companies to help overcome hiring complexity and the hiring challenges that are related to that, specifically from a standpoint of sourcing talent and tech-enabled sourcing solutions. So my original background, I was a tech guy. I dabbled in many different areas of technology, Linux systems administration, security, software development, and was always a little bit adjacent to the world of recruitment, and I started getting interested in the crossover where technology is helping to improve recruitment. And one of the things I would always say is that a little bit of tech goes a long way in a world that hasn't actually, certainly not when we started out back in 2006, 2007, had not actually been really modernized that much by emerging technology. This is something that's set to change now and in the years ahead. I think everybody can feel that, but that's what got me interested and more interested than ever now in how things are unfolding.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It is an exciting time in talent acquisition. Things are happening. We have sort of an emerging new talent acquisition calculus, um, uh, a suite for it, and a new sort of approach to it. Let's start with Star Circle itself. Maybe you could just share with us how did you come up with the name for Star Circle, and what's the concept behind the company? What does the company do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I probably have to go back a little bit far to answer it. I'll go back to 2006, 2007 when we started. Originally, we were working with our product was called vSource, and back then sourcing was very different.
Mm.
We'd take a client rec, you go onto job boards, you'd find resumes, submit them to the recruiter, and get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It was very straightforward in many ways, and the skill involves around finding the candidate, using
Mm.
Boolean strings that were seen as some kind of arcane art. And you know, back then the name vSource, people used to ask even what vSource was about. Why was it called that? And some people would say, is it virtual, speaking to the kind of tech cloud-based nature of what we were doing, or is it, is the V for Vietnam based on, we had a large research team out there. And I used to say that actually V was represented the funnel, represented the
Oh,
sourcing funnel, because we were all about, everything we did was about that funnel, and we talk about funnel metrics all the time, and the volume and the ratio between the different stages of the hiring funnel, and everything. Our North Star was really about getting the more into the top of the funnel and the top stages of the funnel, getting things moving there. But over the years, sourcing changed a lot, and it was no longer this simple transactional activity where you can just get a rec and go out there. And when companies started to think more about the longer term needs of the organization and being a bit more proactive, and if you're dealing with challenging, highly competitive markets like we've seen for the past number of years, where talent is really scarce, uh, you using the traditional approach, you'd burn through the talent pool very quickly,
mm.
and you find yourself with nobody left out there to hire. So we started to work with our clients on a slightly more dynamic approach to take, to iterate beyond that, to take a broader perspective, going beyond the original talent pool to see, well, where we can expand out to,
Mm.
going beyond the job description, challenging a lot of the parameters that would be in there, finding where the bottlenecks are, and our value proposition shifted a little bit. It was no longer just getting the candidates. It was about this process of drying up the talent pool that's there based on your current viewpoint, and then figuring out how to go beyond that to unlock another broader talent pool, and this continuous process of going broader. But our clients that's not where they saw us fitting in. We were the kind of the data guys. We go out and we get the candidates, and so we did this kind of like in a covert manner. So this is why we had to rebrand, and we kind of, this is where Starcircle emerged from.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. That's very interesting. And I know we're going to talk about this. As viewers know, we always have conversations with our guests before they're actually guests on the podcast, and we've had some very interesting conversations, James. And I know that we're going to get to, how we can think about recruiting as sales and also not think about it as sales. But one of the things that strikes me there, what you described is, is having that sort of that. There's the analogy in sales, or the parallel in sales is, having your leads dry up, right? You don't want that to happen. You need, just like you need new customer leads, you need new candidate leads. You need to keep that pipeline stuffed. So maybe that's a good segue actually into what is meant by the concept of long tail talent. What should hiring organizations do to get better at finding it?
Yeah, well, the traditional approach, you have your job rec, you go out there, post it on the website, advertise on a job board, maybe get some referrals from your staff, and plug in a search into LinkedIn and see what comes back. And there's a few things beyond that, but you'll quickly get the low-hanging fruit. You'll quickly get 80% of the talent pool, perhaps in some cases, that's easy to come by. Part of the challenge is that everybody else can find that too. It's well represented. Your profiles are full of keywords, or you're actively looking, or whatever it might be. And what are you going to do with the other 20%? And how are you going to tap into that? It's a much very different process. It's a different approach. These ultra passive candidates, not only you have to search for them differently, but you have to treat them differently. You have to engage with them differently, and it really requires a different mindset. And a lot of the time, people think it's just about finding. I want to find candidates that aren't on LinkedIn. They might very well be on LinkedIn. They're just not showing up in your searches because they're not stuffed with keywords. Or they might be showing up in your searches and you're skipping over them for one reason or another. So that we've been helping companies to kind of take a step backwards a bit, and in every case find, so what is it that you're uncovering, the candidates that you're finding and able to engage with and able to entice through the process, and then where is the portion of the talent pool that is not, either they're not being found, they're not being engaged, or they're not participating in the process. So this turns out to be kind of a complex situation where there's many different factors at play, and we work with our clients to help explore that, and it could be something, it could be your candidate experience. Candidates are falling through the cracks and they're not moving into the interview process because they have to fill out a big long form on the website, or it could be that the job description itself is not optimal. And so there's a much different process applied to getting that final 20% of the talent pool than there would be in the initial low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, interesting. One of the things that struck me there is, so first of all, you're absolutely right. You don't want to be finding the exact same people that everyone else is finding, because then the competition is fierce and it may not even be the best people. I'm sure there are several good people in those pools, but obviously many that aren't necessarily. So you want to find that sort of top talent. We hear this term passive talent, which is, I think, is probably fits into this equation a bit. But for reaching those other people, that 20%, I think, that you mentioned, one thing that you've said that made me think is, going in, well, just the totality of what you shared right there made me think, this is almost thinking about talent acquisition in in the opposite direction, in reverse, which may actually be the proper direction to think about it, or is there any one direction to think about talent acquisition, or looking at it sort of holistically? We're talking about what you're describing is sort of consulting with your customers to really help them focus on the sourcing part of it first, or very very squarely on that, as opposed to maybe some other pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's right. It's firstly kind of overcoming this idea that recruitment is just an add-on to HR and sourcing is just an add-on tacked on to recruitment, and it's a low value feeder for the recruitment team. So I think we're well beyond that now. Sourcing is not this function that just feeds into recruitment teams, and you see at a lot of tech companies in the US, for example, where the sources are, really senior people or very tech savvy data analysts almost, and it's something we're not seeing in Europe to the same extent, but I think it'll come around. And what is the value that sourcing brings, and what are the byproducts of the sourcing process? Well, there's what you're doing is you're developing an understanding of the market, the hireability, the compensation, the availability of skills that are out there, all these things that are really critical and valuable if they were integrated then into your workforce planning and into your hiring strategy. And we've worked with companies, we've seen it so many times over the years where the entire corporate strategy will get a green light over with massive assumptions being made in relation to their ability to hire and execute a particular hiring plan, which is almost like an afterthought. We just take for granted that we're going to be able to get all of those people in the areas that we expect. And what happens is that talent acquisition gets handed a bunch of recs that they've then got to go and fill, and they didn't have any say in it, and they hand that over to the sources, and you're told, go out and get a bunch of people. But a better approach is to integrate these two processes. This is the fact you mentioned about the Starcircle name. Well, Starcircle name and the circle, in fact, came from the idea of this feedback loop between workforce planning, strategic HR, and sourcing, because they're continuously integrated around maybe before your job descriptions go live, before you've created the rec that you want to hire for. You must at least in part probe the talent pool, see what's out there, what skills are available, and the more you can do this, the better you can get at it. It'll change the shape of your organization over time, and you will take into account trends in the market, new skills that are emerging, skills and job titles that are kind of dying out, and you'll be a couple of steps ahead of that because you'll have the market intelligence fueling your workforce planning, and then your performance information coming back into to inform your sourcing strategy. So it becomes this constant loop between sourcing and HR.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And one thing that I'm kind of hearing you say is that, or I'm inferring, I guess, is that sourcing isn't transactional. It's a much bigger thing than that, and also that there's really a new talent acquisition process emerging. And just if I may pontificate for a moment here, from my perch here, honestly, the technology for talent acquisition has sort of limited or been a limiting factor on how we can kind of approach talent acquisition for a long time, because it was developed in terms of sort of this siloed approach. So there were sourcing solutions. By the way, I recall those bad old days where, the lost art of Boolean logic, and there were trainers, 15, 20 years ago who were, that was their whole thing, was showing people how to be as adept at that, proficient as that as possible to source the right candidates. And we're well beyond that. But, we had this sort of very sort of very clean buckets in talent acquisition. You have your ATS, you have your onboarding technology, you have you have that outbound recruiting module or whatever, and whatnot. And it's kind of just been a limiting factor, but we're moving away from that. Absolutely. And but let's all roads lead to AI these days, right? Especially in talent acquisition. You can't talk about talent acquisition with AI. We see a lot of AI predicated solutions out there. And there's definitely a place for AI in this space, but where do a lot of these solutions kind of get it wrong? Because we talked about that, and I really want our viewers to kind of hear this piece of it because it's absolutely essential.
Yeah, well, like yourself, I'm very excited by the developments that AI are bringing in and the things that we can do now and we'll be able to do more of in the future. They definitely add a lot, but I'm also concerned by the understanding that's there and the lack of understanding around how AI is going to fit in to talent acquisition. And one thing's for sure is it's not going to do your work for you. And anybody
Mm,
who's used ChatGPT, for example, knows how fantastic it can be, how useful it can be. It's really great in certain use cases, but a huge part of the value that you get from ChatGPT, for example, is provided by the person who's sitting there doing the prompting, tweaking the prompt, you know, typing the same message 15 different ways to get the result that they want from ChatGPT. So there's a lot of work by the expert, by the human, to manage these processes, and AI is not a silver bullet that companies can sit back and rely on. It's still going to need that expertise. So the real secret sauce, I think, is understanding where the human expertise and where the AI can splice together and intertwine for the best results. So one of the problems around searching and sourcing for candidates is that AI still, well, as you would expect, it gives you what you ask it for.
mm,
So if you're going and asking, I want this, you've got very specific job title, job requirements, job rec. It'll give you back results that meet that, and if you want something different, you're going to have to ask it for something different. So you're back at square one where you're continuously tweaking and adapting your prompt, and that's the only way to do it correctly. Because if it starts giving you results that don't match your question, then you're going to tell it that it's broken. But if you
yeah.
give it, if it's giving you back results that do that do fit what you're asking, then it's done what it's supposed to do, but it hasn't provided value beyond that low-hanging
Mm,
fruit we talked about earlier. It's not tapping into the long tail. It's not finding candidates that are a little bit outside the bullseye. And a lot of the systems now, the AI hiring tools are heavily dependent on the keywords that you put in, and people that don't explicitly display those keywords, in their profiles. And we're talking about passive candidates, in particular. In
mm,
active candidates who have a full resume, no problem. But if you're talking about passive candidates who don't stuff their profile or on LinkedIn, or
yeah.
who are maybe even on a different website where they haven't listed all their skills, they just won't show up, and
Yeah.
and the AI can only do so much.
Yeah. 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 That's so important. You're really hitting on something that we have sort of our archetype of as a hire. I'm using the royal we. As a hiring organization, you have your archetype of who you think is the great fit for this new open role in space. It's often sort of uh, based on an incumbent or maybe someone who just left, right? And that it's understandable that you would that a hiring organization would think that way, but it is limiting in terms of how the organization might develop in the future. And there's a humility in being the hiring organization in terms of saying, okay, I don't know. Maybe I don't know who the next person I need is to fill this role. Maybe do I need this role? Maybe do. That's absolutely correct. You may very well, but maybe I need some other role that I don't know about yet. And now we're getting a little bit outside of the scope of this conversation, but at the same time, it's just this idea and I think that's actually a little bit, I don't know if I'm using the word ironic correctly here, but let's just say it right, because there, by exercising some humility in the use of AI, we're actually, it's not, you're actually helping to increase the potential impact, positive impact of the AI. And that's a lot of things that those AI solutions, they just kind of take in and learn what the using organization is telling them. And the using organization, that's man, that's a huge false postulate just to assume that the hiring organization using the AI has a good handle on what they need.
That's right. Yeah, and we've seen this before as well with some AI and high profile cases whereby the AI in hiring had exacerbated biases that already existed in the organization. I mean, a lot of people say, AI and kind of more data driven talent acquisition is a really good thing, and it is great to have the objective metrics and the data driven approach. But one of the things with AI and machine learning is if you don't know, a lot of times it's kind of a bit of a black box, and you don't know what it's making decisions on, and it can pose a danger and definitely replicate some biases that might be existing in the organization. And
Yeah.
the idea of I mean, particularly we see a lot of companies whereby diversity is high on the agenda, and they're looking to get people from different backgrounds in, but as you mentioned, they're working off job descriptions that have been copy pasted for the last 10 years, and it doesn't really add up. If you say you're out to hire people that are different, but your entire recruitment process is geared towards hiring people that match your particular archetype. So the solution is to go broader, is to reduce maybe the certainty and expand your search as much as you reasonably can. Now, if you're hiring, in certain environments in lab or medical device or something like that, you need certain qualifications, absolutely. But you really have to challenge yourself and see where certain parameters can be relaxed, where we can take a broader approach. And I see programs like these extended internship programs that might last for a year, or where you can really give passive candidates a chance, even if they don't tick all the boxes up front, but they may have the ability to perform in the role, or the role itself might evolve or might tweak slightly. So the first step anyway is always to start with a good understanding of what's out there in the market, and continuously validate and refresh the job descriptions that you're working on.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up, and this is something that we wanted to talk a little bit about, but you bring up a point that this is, a lot of the solutions out there, and rightly so, or no, they're responding to a demand. They have sort of they'll guarantee a certain percentage of diverse candidates, which is, that's good. It's a good thing, but really getting to those diverse candidates, I think that's sort of more of a mechanical way of looking at it, sort of just kind of like going through the motions. Again, not that it isn't a good thing to do that, but at the same time, to really get those diverse candidates, this is like you said, you really need to sort of rethink what you're looking for at the very outset. You're going to I'd say more organically and naturally, authentically, reach those diverse candidates that you're going to engage to bring into the fold. I want to get to something here around hiring friction, because you talk a lot about hiring friction. We've had some conversations around that. What is it? How much of it should we eliminate? How much should we retain? What is the goal here with hiring friction? Am I even asking the right questions here?
Yeah, I think so. Well, when as I mentioned, when we were realizing that sourcing is not this, we're not going to be successful if the client's expecting us just to come back with lists of candidates to fill a rec where there's other factors that are going to prevent them from being able to tap into the long tail of talent and hire candidates that are outside their field of vision. So we started to explore, well, what are all those other factors that are going to affect and influence your ability to be successful in hiring? And we worked with some fantastic analysts over the last 18 months to develop this model for what we call hiring friction. And what this is, it's a measure of recruitment capability effectiveness. So it's a measure of how good your recruitment function is in many ways, and it takes into account 12 different components. So this is starting from something like your demand alignment, how well aligned your recruitment team is with the business and the long-term needs of the organization, through things like talent market understanding, how well you understand actually what's out there in the market, the compensation, the skills, and your position in the market, your employer brand, and how much clout and ability you have to actually get the attention of passive talent that are out there, all the way through things like your candidate experience, your technology enablement, and the availability of data and the data integrity. Every single one of these things affects your ability to hire. And if we think about sourcing in the context of just, here's my rec, give me a list of candidates, it's you're going to hit a brick wall very quickly. But if we start seeing it as a web of integrated components that can be gradually improved and developed over a longer period of time, then it's a game changer.
Yeah. So if you have too much friction in your hiring process, and obviously it's your talent acquisition process, right? That's going to dissuade, or let me put it this way, it's challenging enough to find and engage that long tail talent, and to get them, because they're not necessarily looking. Maybe they're looking, but they're not necessarily, right? To get them engaged and maybe sort of moving. It's like getting a shy cat to come to you, right? Yeah, anything happens, they're going to be shooting off there. There's going to be abandonment of the process, candidate abandonment, and so to get rid of that friction, you're maximizing the potential for those folks to actually stay in the fold, to remain in the fold, so that you can actually tap them for when you need them, and bring them into the process. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's a huge deal. We alluded to this earlier, and I want to get back to it here. Obviously, and I think ultimately this is from my perspective, or from where I sit, it seems like a good thing. There's more and more of a sales mindset being applied to talent acquisition, and it seems to me to be a good thing, because there's a lot more sort of there's more what's the word? It's a more solid process in sales. Like, they're really paying attention to, okay, who are the leads? All right, where are they in the process? Is it warm lead? Is it cold lead? Is it lead generation? All this kind of stuff. Like, they're really focused on that, and that's good, because they get it's a sort of a precursor to getting better results. And I think that talent acquisition can benefit from that sort of attitude, but at the same time, we talked about this, and it's really important. Why is it deeply flawed to think of talent acquisition as a sales funnel?
Yeah. Well, you're dead right that when we saw the sales and marketing language creeping into talent acquisition, even the term talent acquisition itself only really emerged over the last 10 years and just came everywhere. It was a really good thing. There's a lot of great stuff that came out. You think about the long term, a little bit more in certain ways around your forecasting and your metrics and all of that. But there's a lot of issues. Firstly, the concept of the funnel itself. As we mentioned, that it points to a linear process, which is really no longer the case. And sales and marketing have realized this now in recent years. HubSpot killed off their funnel. And they said they explicitly say this as well, that it's a flywheel now, and they only speak about their flywheel. And if you talk about the funnel there, then no, we talk about the flywheel now, which is far better and represents it a lot more, because you're selling not just to cold prospects out there in the market, but you're selling to you're upselling with your customers, and you're getting former customers back into the fold, and there's this continuous life cycle. And when recruitment, we're seeing the same things. It's not just an endless profile, an endless parade of kind of strangers coming through here, but we've got alumni, we've got referrals, we've got people who we engaged with in the past that might not be a fit right now, but might be a fit in the future, and we've got our employer brand to consider, and all these kinds of things. So in many ways, there's great benefits to a sales and marketing mindset, but there's also risks, and one of the risks being that linearity of the sales process that we often see. But
Mm,
second one too is the way that you incentivize and manage your recruitment team, and your sources if you have a sourcing team. Um, my experience is that they tend to be geared towards hiring quota of placements, and you often see kind of an overload by design. Is that, we'll see, okay,
mm,
how much can a recruiter possibly handle, and let's just dump that on that's how many recruiters we're going to hire.
yeah.
So if you're overloaded and chasing a quota and chasing placements all the time, as you would expect from an account exec, you're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that are maybe a little bit further away from the money, in terms of placements,
Mhm.
and that includes speaking to those candidates that could be fantastic, but they don't tick all the boxes.
Yeah.
So when you think about diverse candidates from a slightly different background who don't look exactly like the archetype we talked about earlier, are they worth a phone call or not? Well, if you have a bit of room to breathe, and if you've got time to have conversations with prospects and learn a little bit and delve into other alternatives for filling this requirement, then you might have that conversation. But if you're chasing a quota and you're back to back, then you're going to overlook those people who are just outside the bullseye.
Mm.
And so there needs to be something in your organization that's dedicated to that more exploratory function, that's not tied to this reactive quota that's always going to keep them
Mm.
in this hamster wheel. And in my opinion, this is what sourcing is. And in the era now of information overload, the sourcer is the one at the coal face, in a
Mm.
position potentially to reconcile the long-term needs of the business with the reality of the talent pool. It's no longer just about getting resumes, but it's about exploring, continuously building up that intel, continuously building up the pipelines, and that community, and then using all that intel, feed it back into HR, as a business partner.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you put it really well there. It's just, uh, that relationship building. There's relationship building in sales too, but it's a much bigger piece of it in recruiting. And you got to give your sourcers the a wide enough berth so that they can actually engage in that relationship building without worrying about whether they're producing a lead, potential candidate, into the system, because it's understood that they're doing a little bit more than that, something deeper. This is just, I'm looking at the time. This is just, flies by when we're having a good conversation, talking about interesting things. I mean, this has just been absolutely phenomenal, James. Thank you so much for being a guest of ours here. This is really important stuff. Anybody who's involved in talent acquisition, um, uh, you're out there, make sure that you're thinking about this in a different way. There are new ways to think about it, and you can be much more strategic and effective, and achieve the results you want. Thank you so much, James.
Thanks very much, Brent.
Absolutely. Take care.